So, Bob, we had a really good question from a viewer about why do we lose running water sometimes when these big storms hit?
Well, the answer to that is basically because we lose power, and then the pumping stations can't pump the water out anymore, and a lot of the filtration systems won't be able to work either, so the water may be contaminated. So you cannot, when the power goes out, that causes the problem, the initial problem. And also flooding can also be a big problem and concern as well into some of the pumping stations as far as the other aspects of the water goes as well. So keep that in mind.
And you mentioned that generators just, they might not be able to do all of what the full power can do at a pumping station.
Exactly, and that's the key. So that's the reason why you have to have 1 gallon per person per day to drink.
Okay.
And then fill your bathtub up and so on and other things to help flush the toilets if indeed the power does go out. And that's certainly a possibility with this storm. It's still not definitive yet as to what we can expect here. So people are asking, should we evacuate? Should we, think about, leaving town, getting out of here? It's still too early in my estimation. If we're going to get a mandatory evacuation issued for us, it wouldn't happen on Wednesday. I don't think it would happen on Thursday. It would happen on Friday. And that's when the warning would go into effect. More than likely, that's the best guess that we can get right now. We continue to be in that cone of uncertainty. Until we get out of that, we have to be very vigilant in our guard against Irma at this point. It is a dangerous, unbelievable storm. Even the National Hurricane Center is calling it a spectacular hurricane presentation on the satellite imagery. It's just amazing. The GFS is now shifting it to the east of the state of Florida. They've been shifting back and forth, and so now you get the National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service always stress, don't focus on that center line so much, and the fact that day 4 and 5 will be going back and forth, flip-flopping still on Wednesday because of some small weather pattern that's expected to develop over the lower Mississippi Valley. The timing for the Suncoast still looks to be late Sunday, but more so now on Monday as a result of the system possibly slowing a little bit over the southern portion of the state. But it's going to stay as a Category 5 hurricane, it appears, if it does not interact with the land area of Hispaniola, and it doesn't look like it's going to. It's going to stay north of that area. The water temperatures here, 90 degrees for the most part. The conditions are extremely favorable for this to stay as a Category 5 hurricane. It may lose a little strength due to the fact that it could go through several eye wall replacements, and that's what happens when it gets so wound up. The inner eye wall collapses and a larger outer wall develops, and then the storm starts to spread its wind field. So even though it may decrease in intensity around the center, what that means is that some of the energy and wind is spreading out. So it's going to be a bigger storm. It's not going to be a Charlie at all. Charlie had a tightly wound center, and most of that energy was right there within 20 miles of the center. This one is going to have a wind field well over 100 miles out from the center in terms of tropical storm force and possibly even hurricane force as we march through time. The Turks and Caicos are going to take a beating from this storm. Category 5 storm with a storm surge up to 20 feet high. As far as this storm projection goes, there's still a lot of uncertainty. You see day 4 and then day 5, the Hurricane Center indicating it could be a Category 4, but intensity forecasting is still not a very good science at this point. Knowing where the storm's going is pretty good, but you can see that it's still got a ways to go on day 4 and 5. So we sit, we watch, we wait this system out. Tomorrow evening we'll have a much better chance to get a handle on when that northern break is going to occur. But boy, a very impressive looking storm on the satellite imagery. These are some of the forecast models, and you can see a lot of them now starting to pile up in the central portion of the state and along the east coast. And there are a few off into the Atlantic as well, with a couple still hanging on here out in the Gulf of Mexico. This is the Canadian model, which has been fairly consistent in keeping it out in the Gulf. So we'll have to keep an eye on the Canadian model. But right now, the two most reliable models, the GFS and the European model, are the ones that the National Hurricane Center put most of their weight into when it comes to determining that hurricane cone, cone of uncertainty. But right there, just to the east and northeast of Antigua and Barbuda, this is where that massive hurricane is right now, with gusts up to 225 miles an hour. There are, again, watches and warnings up for the Dominican Republic at this point as it makes its way toward the northwest. Now, we are anticipating this trough to come down. A little piece of energy will come down and kind of hang out over the lower Mississippi Valley and cause the system to move more northward in time. But we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. We have Jose out there in the Atlantic. That's not going to be a factor at all, it doesn't appear, Jose. And then we have Tropical Depression 13 in the southwest Gulf of Mexico, which is also going to be a problem for Mexico, but that'll be about it. We'll get to the forecast real quickly. For boaters, again, this should be Wednesday, southeast winds turn to the west, and then the tides coming on your screen, sunrise will be at 7:12. The forecast tonight, A few isolated storms are still possible. Tomorrow, a little bit better chance for scattered storms, a high of 90, and the extended forecast is calling for a much better chance for rain as we push into Friday and especially on Sunday and Monday.